Hey gang, Ryan Peterson here. It's time for Bryan and Ryan talking sports.
Woo!
This is the episode for September 22nd, and we're going to be talking about the past weekend of football, and there was a lot of it. Talk a little golf, U.S. Open. Bryan, we have to start with the Dallas Cowboys. So you're a Cowboy fan. Um, how many times do you think over the course of the game did Cowboys fans want the coach fired, love him, want Jerry out? I mean, it's funny, the emotions in that game going back and forth, it was unbelievable.
Well, I don't know that everybody's ready to get McCarthy out of there just yet. But the thing, I listened to the first half of the game. I was on the road coming back from Louisiana. I had gone down for a funeral. And so I listened to the first half, and Brad Sham and Babe Laufenberg were just killing the Cowboys over the way they played and the way they didn't play in
Right.
the first quarter. They were so flat and lifeless in a game that they had to win because you're playing Seattle next week and you're looking at the very real possibility of going 0-3 if you drop this game to Atlanta. And they could not have looked more disinterested in a football game if you dreamed it up that way. And they were absolutely dreadful. They go out there, they lay the ball on the ground 4 times in the first quarter. They give up 3 of them. 2 of them lead to long touchdown passes from Ryan, and they're down 20-0 in the first quarter before they
Could have
even.
been worse.
And then Babe Laufenberg basically says, "Hey, do you think they realize that the kickoff is at 12:30? Because it was supposed to be noon, but nobody's awake yet." So it was unbelievable, and later it was 26-7. It just kept getting worse and uglier, and so. By the time I got home, I got in for the halftime, and I was able to watch the second half. And I thought, okay, they got one of 2 ways to go. This is where we're going to find out what kind of a head coach Mike McCarthy is. Because when these kinds of things happened under Garrett, number one, I can't recall them ever getting way, way down. But usually if they did, they went ahead and got drilled. They just mailed it in. Am I wrong by saying that?
They've had some rallies. I'd have to go back and actually look because I do remember Dak, having some crazy near comebacks.
I just remember this was like the 4th or 5th greatest comeback in the history of the team. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're thinking now, keep in mind, I'm a child of the 60s and the 70s. And I started watching the Cowboys when basically, late 60s, early 70s. And so you learned really early on when Roger Staubach was the quarterback, never turn the game off, no matter what the score is, because Captain Comeback, it's not done until it's done. And how many times people had left the stadium or turned it off and cussed it and said, "I'm done." And then they turn on, an hour later and find out that Staubach brought them back to win it. Well, that's exactly what yesterday felt like. To see them down 9 points with 4.5 minutes to go in the ball game after going for 2, and you still need 2 scores with 4.5 minutes to go in the game, and actually getting them, it was just unbelievable. It's just, I mean, it's a testament to their fight and their character that they came back. And I'll just say, Jerry, paid Dak Prescott whatever he wants. He is a franchise quarterback. He was spectacular in the fourth quarter. Okay? I mean, you couldn't have played better football in the fourth quarter. And I'm going to stop now and let you talk.
So I told you before we started recording, I had actually went back and watched the whole game over again. I can do it really quickly with Sunday Ticket, but a few things that I took from this game. Number one, I will say about Dak, since you just mentioned it, I will agree with you that was I would think that made Dak some money, because Dak, if you go back, Bryan, and watch that, and I know you said you didn't actually get to see the first half,
Mm-hmm.
Dak was running for his life.
Yeah.
The offensive line was terrible. I went back and watched the entire game again, and I started marking whenever the Cowboys, and they were doing this a lot in the second half, well, because they were trailing, because of all the fumbles, they were going shotgun, and whenever they were dropping back to pass straight out of the shotgun, Dak had no time. He got hit so many times. He was having to run. His mobility helped in those cases, but he was getting – they were all over him. Within 2 seconds, the pocket had collapsed. So Dak was having to run for his life and engineer this comeback. The receivers stepped up. Cooper had a great game. CeeDee Lamb looks like he's going to be another great one wearing number 88. Gallup was actually kind of quiet, but they have the horses in terms of weapons. But the offensive line, to me, going forward is a huge concern, especially if Tyron Smith doesn't come back in the future. We just found out today that Jared Valdir, a veteran offensive tackle, the Cowboys had it lined up. He was supposed to sign. He opted to retire. They are apparently possibly going to be signing Ronald Leary, but he's a guard. But right now, the offensive line, this is not – I had said to you a couple weeks ago, I think we're still living in the past on these great Cowboys offensive lines. This is not the same line anymore.
I will say this, 2 things. They adjusted and started running more no huddle and hurry up offense and getting the ball out of their hands a lot easier, a lot faster. And so they were able to compensate, and they played much better offense in the second half. And basically, Dak was in a clean pocket most of the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. So,
when I went back and looked, he got hit a lot.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of them were quick decisions. Also, what I have seen, they're very effective out of play action. They need to do more play action because, look, Zeke is so good.
And he's having a great year even with the bad offensive line.
Right. So I think with what was working in the first half when they started getting going after after they spotted the Falcons 20 points, I think was the play action and getting Zeke the ball. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to – my point, though, is that adjustments were not made last year. And in the 10 years that Garrett was the head coach, adjustments were few and far between. So I was really encouraged to see adjustments being made to put them in a position to at least have a chance to win that ball game. Nobody thought they were going to come back and win that game. You just wanted them to keep fighting and show something, at least show that under the McCarthy era that they're going to have some fight and that they weren't just going to cash it in now and say, I'm done because we're getting pounded, and they did that and ultimately won the ball game. The thing that I will say is you're right. Their offensive line is going to be a concern all year long. But keep in mind, even with that offensive line the way it was, they still ended up with over 500 yards of offense, and they still ended up scoring 40 points. And that's incredible when you think about it. And that's not even the biggest problem this team has.
Right, and it is. But, again, the Atlanta Falcons are not a good defensive team. So this was a game – that the Cowboys were very lucky to win. Hats off to them for not giving up because the Dallas Cowboys did everything they could to give Atlanta a win. And Atlanta was so pathetic that they gave this game away. Bryan, in the history of the NFL, 440 teams had scored 39 or more points with no turnovers, and all 440 of them had won. The Atlanta Falcons somehow managed to lose, and the onside kick at the end of the game, I keep hearing everyone say, what a great onside kick. It was not a good kick. It was the worst execution I have ever seen at any level. If I had seen this in 8th grade football, I would have been flipping out. There were 4 Falcons just staring at the ball. Jump on the ball, the game's over. They let it go the 10 yards. Heads up to the Cowboys for knowing the rules because the Falcons players didn't know what they were doing.
I will argue with you. I thought it was one of the greatest onside kicks I've ever seen. They actually work on it. They call it the watermelon kick. And I've never seen it before, but Zerline, the kicker, had said, we've been working on this because we've got to do things differently. The rules have changed in the online kicks. So it's from the Cowboys' execution, it was like watching somebody bowling.
But the reason I don't agree that it's a good kick, it works, so I guess technically it is.
But my point about the reason it worked,
it wouldn't have mattered because the ball was –
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I think the reason that it did work is because nobody's ever seen it like that before. And so the Falcons were so stunned at what they were watching. And then, like you said, to not have the presence of mind to just dive onto the football. And it literally went the full 10 yards.
To
And the
watch a ball
Cowboys did it.
spin in slow motion for
It was
5 yards
crazy. It was
is the
insane.
worst. I've never seen it. I haven't seen anything that bad since maybe going back to Leon Lett doing his gap against the Dolphins on Thanksgiving, whatever year that was. Dan Quinn was already, I think, on the hot seat.
Yeah.
He's a guy that I think is going to be fired before the season's over. Hats off to the Cowboys. And like you said, with their schedule, because the Cowboys' schedule at the beginning of the season is pretty rough. They lose that game. They're looking – although I will say, Brian, their division is so bad, it may not have mattered. Because if one other good thing came out of this Sunday for the Cowboys, the Eagles look awful. And the Cowboys are definitely better than the Giants and the Washington football team. So the Cowboys, even with the problems they're having on the offensive line, and the defense continues not to make any plays.
Hey, listen, that's where your real problem is.
Yeah.
That defense is horrendous. They did not get 1 ounce of pressure on Matt Ryan the entire day. And that's with 2 or 3 really well-paid defensive linemen on there. They're not even getting close.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's got to change. DeMarcus Lawrence better start earning that paycheck because that dude is MIA in these ball games.
Because even going back and looking, I guess I have to give them some credit because the Cowboys had all those turnovers in the first quarter and it was only 20-0. But the reality is, when you watch the Cowboys, they don't make any big plays. They don't do anything that flips the script. They don't get sacks. They didn't force any turnovers. It's actually, Brian, incredible. What makes the Cowboys win even more insane is that there were no turnovers. There wasn't like some crazy play that allowed the Cowboys to get a short field. The Cowboys had to do it the hard way offensively, and Dak put the team on his shoulders and brought them back to put up 40 points, and just unbelievable. They may be looking back at this at the end of the season. You know, maybe it saved their season with what lies ahead, but credit to them for getting the win.
It was unbelievable. A couple of other things we'll just talk about real quickly. Real fast, just my comment. Joe Burrow is the real deal. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a stinking thing around him. So it's going to be, if he lives through the season, it's going to be a miracle. But if there's any
60 throws as a rookie with no preseason, and he didn't throw a single pick, looked like he was in control. Really, looked like he'd been in the league for 5 years.
And that's with 0 offensive line and no weapons. It's incredible what he was able to do in that ball game. And of course, they got beat, but he kept it close. He keeps them in it, and they believe in him. So that guy is a legit number 1 pick. Second thing, don't ever think, no matter how well you're playing against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, do not ever think you've got this guy beaten until you get the game over with. Because I've watched him my whole life from the time he started playing in high school. You got to kill him if you want to beat him, because as long as you give him even a chance, he's coming back to beat you.
Well, watching that game yesterday, I could not believe, especially – the Chargers did so many things wrong at the end, and I've seen so many teams do this now, including my Broncos. They had a very similar game against Mahomes 2 years ago. They led by 10 points in the fourth quarter, and the reality is you have to keep scoring. You have to. If you do not have a 3 or 4 score lead like in the last few minutes, the game is not over. Mm-hmm. And, Brian, the biggest – I had texted my dad when I was watching the game. When they went to overtime, the Chargers got the ball. I was like, they have to score a touchdown or they are going to lose. Like, you have to go into it saying, we cannot give them the ball back. And on 4th and 1, they punted. Yep. And we all knew what was going to happen. And then throw in the fact now that their kicker, Butker, is making multiple 58-yard field goals. You have no shot. So, and really the funny thing yesterday, a lot of times teams don't get pressure on Patrick or he gets out of it. The Chargers had some great pressure yesterday, but Patrick yesterday used his legs more than I typically see. He ran for like 4 first downs. But just, you keep him down for a quarter, sometimes a half if you're lucky. but eventually they're going to get it figured out, and that's what happened. And here the Chiefs are again 2-0.
And the thing that was so amazing about it was that the Chargers played fantastic defense, and Justin Herbert looked like the real deal. I don't know if Taylor gets his job back after the game that Herbert played yesterday. And everybody had talked about Herbert being this timid guy, and that was one of the problems he was going to have as a quarterback in the league, is that he needed to be more vocal, be louder, be more of a leader. That dude played great yesterday, and they still couldn't beat the Chiefs. And that's what the Chiefs kind of, like they dominated the Chiefs for 3 quarters.
But throughout that whole game, I just knew that, and as a Broncos fan, it's just something you have to accept. You have to score, in my opinion, at a minimum 30 points. If you do not have at least, I don't care what the score is, he's going to figure it out. You saw the touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill. All it takes is one play. They can score a drive in 10 seconds. So the Chargers played them about as well defensively as you can. We saw it in the Super Bowl, Brian. I mean, we saw the 49ers shut them down for 3.5 quarters for the most part, and then they explode. You have to have a bigger lead because Patrick's going to get you in the end.
Yeah. The other major story in the NFL, I'll mention one other thing. I think that when it's all said and done, in the AFC, it's going to come down to the Chiefs and the Seahawks. Seahawks put on a show last night, beat a really good team in the Patriots. I'm not sure there's better teams than those 2 teams in the AFC. Now, you may disagree. Baltimore's very good. NFC. Baltimore's very good.
But in the NFC, so they'd have to play in the Super Bowl.
That's true. I'm sorry. I've gone.
You're thinking the old AFC West.
Yes, I am, and I am old. But the Seahawks are very good, and they could be a Super Bowl team. And Russell Wilson is, he says he's the best quarterback in the league. I don't necessarily agree with that, but he's one of the top 3 or 4. There's no argument there. The big story, though, was the number of injuries, major injuries to major stars in the ball game. Saquon Barkley out for the year with a torn ACL. Christian McCaffrey with the Panthers is going to be out for a significant amount of time.
Right.
Bosa got hurt yesterday.
Tore his ACL.
Drew Lock, the Broncos quarterback's beat up, and Garoppolo has a bad ankle. No telling how long he's going to be out, but what are you thinking? I mean, it just seems like, I know there are injuries every week in the NFL, but I just have never seen, it just seemed like there were major injuries all day long in every game you watched.
Yeah, and there were a lot of big injuries. There were 6 torn ACLs as of now, just yesterday. I feel for so many of these players. As a fan, you want them playing for your team, but you got to think about everything they have to now go through to get back physically. And I know it's easier to come back now than it used to be, but coming back from those kind of injuries, it is crazy. I expected a lot of maybe like hamstring injuries and things like that. The ACL and the Achilles injuries and things like that. I don't know. I had heard Vic Fangio from the Broncos say today he attributed it not to a lack of offseason, but he thinks that this is a reflection of no preseason. I don't know if that's true. But guys go into this season, without really even a real training camp, and they're going in full contact.
Yeah.
What do you think's going to happen? We're 2 weeks. We haven't even finished week 2. And I don't remember this many, like you said, injuries always happen, but I don't remember this many star players. Which, that's where it gets tricky for the NFL when you have star players aren't going to be on the field for the rest of the season or a significant amount of time. Really tough to watch. And, football's a violent game, but seeing that many guys go down yesterday, it was rough. Multiple people were tweeting, if this ain't 2020, I don't know what is.
It is.
Like this year is just the worst.
I mean, there's nothing good has come from it so far. The one thing I will say is that at least with the Cowboys game yesterday, there were 21,000 fans in the place, and it felt kind of normal, especially with them coming back, and you could actually hear a real live crowd.
It was nice just to hear fans.
Yeah.
Even if it was only 20,000, it was nice to hear fans react to a play as opposed to the fake noise that they've been, putting in on the broadcast.
What I'm looking forward to now as we shift gears, this week the SEC begins its play. And I am hoping and praying that we don't get to Friday and what happened this past Friday when Houston had already shown up in Waco, and then the game is called because Baylor has contact tracing. And so, and the rule in the Big 12 is that if one player tests negative, they shut the thing down, if I'm correct on that. And so that's 3 openers now that Baylor has not been able to play. I've got to have my LSU Tigers, okay, Saturday. And if Friday night comes and they tell us that game's not getting played, I'm going to go nuts, okay? So I'm really looking forward to it, because also the other thing, Saturday's slate of games was brutal.
It was bad.
I mean, it was brutal. There wasn't the only marquee game was the Miami-Louisville game, and that was okay. But honestly, I quit watching it in the first half.
When you have Tulsa and Oklahoma State,
exactly,
that's a marquee afternoon game, which that game was brutal. Oklahoma State very lucky to win. Tulsa's defense shut them down for the most part. Yep. Now Oklahoma State's quarterback did get hurt, but still, it was a brutal Saturday of college football, because I ended up just turning the TV off because I was just bored by what was on.
Now, we talked last week before the decision was made, but then the Big Ten came out and made the decision to go ahead and play football. But they're not starting until mid to late October.
I believe it's like October 23rd or something like that.
8-game season with a 9th day, a championship day, where not only do they have a championship game, but then they have all the other conference teams play 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3, 4 versus 4. And the 9th game is the who gives a crap bowl, and just kill me, But I heard Tom Luganbill say this, and knowing just how shady the leadership is in the Big Ten, I completely believe they did this on purpose. They set this thing up to start late in October. They play 8 games with no weeks off. If anything gets canceled, there's nowhere in that schedule where they can reschedule a game. And if a player tests positive, it's not a 14-day quarantine. It's a 21-day quarantine.
Is that for the player or the team?
That's for the player. But if that player, all it takes is one position group.
Right.
You've got an offensive lineman getting, tested positive, and you've got these other guys, you may lose games now. You may have to cancel games that can't be made up. And his theory was that what he thinks will happen is that the Big Ten will say, see, I told you we can't do this, and they'll cancel the season anyway, which I totally believe might be in the back of their minds. This gives them an out. They say, yeah, we tried, but then they still end up not playing, which I still think if you watch the SEC and the ACC are going to play, they are going to play by God if it kills them. Okay. But the Big Ten does not want to do this. The leadership of the Big Ten, the presidents and the athletic director, the players, coaches, athletic departments, the fans, the parents, they all want to play. The leadership did not. All they're doing is saving face right now, but they've left themselves, even in that situation, an out where they might be able to get out of this still without playing football.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. A part of me wants
They're liars. It's real simple.
I don't understand why you would give yourself no buffer. That's the biggest thing, because we've already seen, like, what have we been playing for 2 or 3 weeks? There have been games, yeah. And we've already seen multiple cancellations.
But we've seen more games get played.
The big key in all this is going to be, and I last check, correct me if I'm wrong, at last check I had seen that there had not been any decision or made about the college football playoff in terms of having a minimum number of games that had to be played.
Right.
Because let's say a couple games do have to get canceled. Let's say Ohio State, who a lot of people think was going to be a national championship contender. Let's say they're 6-0, but they had 2 games canceled. And our eyes tell us, well, we think they are, but they've only played 6 games. And in the SEC, they've played more. A Big 12 team has played more. What are they going to decide? I think that's going to be a big thing too.
Mm-hmm.
And because, if you have some of these Ohio State kids, they're like, what are we? I mean, what just happened? You guys have taken us on this emotional roller coaster of ups and downs, and now we're going to have it taken away from us again. So that's going to be, to me, a big thing is what are they going to make a decision and who's making that decision?
Well, I can tell you this, the college football selection committee is not going to make a hard and firm decision on that until they have to. And they'll have to sit down when they meet and determine how many games is a big enough sample size that we can take this seriously. And because this is all about Ohio State. This is all about Ohio State. Nobody else in the Big Ten's got a shot. Okay. Penn State's got enough talent to maybe compete, but bottom line is it's Ohio State and nobody else.
Right.
So this is all about giving them a chance to get into the playoff. And by that nature, also qualifying. One of the things I think that they're just leaving the door open is because it's inventory. They still need TV money. By not playing, they don't get anything. By playing, they might get some of that TV money. But I just think ultimately the questions you make a real valid point. I mean, is 6 games going to be enough? I would argue 6-0 Big Ten champion against a 9-1 SEC runner-up, it doesn't jive. The schedule in the SEC, all of them, they're all playing all conference games. So the strength of schedule is different. The number of games, if you go 9-1 playing a full SEC schedule with no non-conference games, I'm sorry, but you hadn't played enough ball games, and there's not enough competition in the Big Ten to say that you've run the gauntlet that the SEC teams have.
You made a good point too about the decision. I'm sitting here saying, what if a Big Ten team doesn't have enough games? We still don't even know if the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, will they even be able to play 6 games? We may get to, so you're right, they may have to wait and make this decision at the very end and just see how it goes, because we could ultimately end up having a bunch of teams, Brian, that got in 5 games.
That's maybe
and then, are we still going to do a playoff based on 5 games of,
But I will say this: at least the SEC has they've left themselves a couple of open dates.
Right.
They could try to reschedule something. The Big Ten didn't leave any breathing room, and I think they did that on purpose. I think they did that. I think it was a very calculated decision. You got one other thought about the U.S. Open, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah. So Bryson DeChambeau won the U.S. Open yesterday on Sunday. So I guess my thing, I feel like everyone always overreacts to everything immediately. I get, it's social media. It's all, talking heads Monday morning when you turn on all the major sports networks. But all I keep hearing now is, and I heard it during the broadcast, that DeChambeau has changed the way the game is going to be played. There are purists that don't like it. He hit only 23 of 56 fairways. It was the fewest fairways hit by an Open winner since 1981. And, basically what he did is he bulked up, and his whole thing was, I'm going to hit it way further than anyone else to have that advantage. I was explaining to my wife, I say, he's the closest thing to a real life Happy Gilmore as you could possibly have. The difference is his short game is better. But do you think, because everyone's making this big point, like Rory McIlroy was making all these comments yesterday, like, he just doesn't know how to wrap his mind around it and what he's done. I think this is an overreaction in terms of that this is how it's going to be forever, because he won this Open, but he had also struggled in other tournaments, and there are certain courses it wasn't working. Or do you think that we are going to see that this is going to be a game changer where it's all about now grip it and rip it and just hit it as far as you can?
Well, that's what we turn baseball into. I mean, I guess it's possible. But, honestly, they said the same thing about Tiger. They were scared to death. I mean, they changed golf courses because of Tiger Woods, because he hit it so far. Are we going to suddenly see a rash of incredible Hulks out there with, a 3-wood in their hand? I don't know. But it's working for him. And the last time I checked, doesn't matter how you do it, it's the low score that wins, So you still have to make the shots. He may not have made the fairway, but he hit it so dang far. Then he could create shots with his short game. So, he must be legit. And the U.S. Open, we all know the course is set up to embarrass and humiliate the golfer every year. And he managed to win the thing by 6 strokes. So,
and their fairways were, I think that's was what I guess didn't sit well with so many purists, is that, like you said, the U.S. Open, the fairways are so narrow. It's like my driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And the rough is thick, and he was still crushing it out of the rough.
Yeah.
And but my thing is, he didn't break any rules. The guy, I mean, he figured out a plan, and he did it one tournament. But we don't know how this is going to affect, going forward. We don't know if this will work every time.
I mean, listen, the bottom line is you can just look at the game of golf now and look at it 20 years ago. Okay. And you look at the bodies of these guys now. I mean, it used
Brooks
to be
Koepka.
Craig Stadler used to walk out there weighing 40 pounds more than he should, be
John Daly
fat.
with the beer in his
Yeah.
cigar.
So, I mean, the game, there's no doubt that the golfers take better care of themselves physically.
And I think Tiger changed a lot of that.
No doubt.
Tiger was, an elite athlete.
I mean, but all these guys have all got 32-inch waist now. They don't have beer guts. Jack Nicklaus used to be a dumpy, frumpy, fat guy when he was playing. I mean, it's just all these guys were, you looked at them and went, man, there ain't nothing physical specimen about this guy. It's just changed. And they know that, taking care of themselves, working out. NASCAR drivers do it. So the game's evolved. It's changed, and you see guys hitting it further. I think the equipment has as much to do with it as the strength of the golfers. I mean, you put titanium in a guy's hand, as opposed to, an old wood, you're going to hit it further. So, I mean, there's been things that have changed golf every era since the beginning of time. I'm not too worked up about it. As long as you've got competitive Sunday afternoons where you've got 4 or 5 golfers in the running, where, the thing about Tiger would come in. Sometimes Tiger would have a 10-shot lead and he'd just be coasting, the whole Sunday afternoon. That's not happening anymore.
I just feel like, several years ago, I heard it was Rory that was changing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And now Rory has gone, I think, 6 years since winning a major. And then even last year, Brooks Koepka is changing everything. And, things happen. Hats off. I just think hats off to him for doing it in an unorthodox way, but it was still entertaining. And congrats to him, and we'll see what happens. But I think the panic about the game being totally changed. I think we need to wait and see what happens. Let him play another tournament.
I'm not panicking. I'm fine. Hey, one thing I'll leave you with. Do you realize that in this show today, we yelled over each other, we disagreed. It's almost like we're back to normal.
That's what people want to see. It's just yelling and screaming at each other.
It's a screaming sports argument. I mean, that's exactly. I felt like it was almost like we're not even in COVID anymore. This is great. Hey, Ryan, always enjoy it, man. Again, this will get posted and people will be able to watch it first thing on Tuesday morning. And if you want to leave a comment on the YouTube channel, just hey, call us idiots, whatever you prefer. If you want to share it with your friends, please do. We're just grateful that, all 5 of you that watched last week might come back and watch again this week. So that's good.
All right. Well, get ready to argue again next week. And thank you guys so much for watching. And we do appreciate the few of you that do. This is just fun for us to get to talk sports. So we will see you guys next week. Thanks so much.
See ya.